What is going on, everybody? Got ourselves another NFL mock draft here. I did just upload a mock last weekend, and usually I do them every 2 weeks, but a lot of big things have happened in the NFL the past week with Matthew Stafford and Deshawn Watson officially requesting trades. The Senior Bowl is going on. We now know the Super Bowl matchup, so a lot has changed in the landscape of the league in the past week, and I kind of wanted to do a mock draft now with all of this new news. And I wanted to have a mock draft that featured trades. So this mock will have trades. We're doing 2 rounds, and I decided to get a little creative, think outside the box. And we have a lot of superstars on the move, not just Deshawn Watson and Matthew Stafford, but others. I also have trades just involving picks. So this might get a little bit chaotic, but I decided to have some fun with it, and I hope you guys are ready. So before we go over any of the actual picks, I'm going to go over all of the trades involving superstar players. So we're going to start off with Deshawn Watson. I had the Texans trading him to the Miami Dolphins. I think out of all the teams that will seriously consider Watson, the Dolphins have the most to give. And I think Deshawn Watson would be happy to waive his no-trade clause in order to go to the Dolphins. So I had the Texans getting a lot in return. The 3rd pick, the 18th pick, the 50th pick, a first-rounder next year from the Dolphins, and Tua Tagovailoa in exchange for Deshawn Watson and a future 5th-round pick. I know this is a lot to give up, but Deshawn Watson is a 25-year-old quarterback who is an elite player at his position and will likely be elite for the next decade plus. The Dolphins have a very good infrastructure. They have a very good roster at the moment, at least defensively. They do need some more offensive pieces, but they're getting themselves a legit quarterback. Tua is still unproven. Deshawn Watson is proven. And for the Texans, they're getting a lot back, including 3 first-round picks, 2 of which are this year, and 1 of them is in the top 3. They're getting a 2nd-rounder and Tua, who they can develop as their own franchise quarterback. So at pick 3, they don't have to pick a quarterback. Next up, I have the Detroit Lions trading Matthew Stafford of the Indianapolis Colts for their first-rounder this year, which is pick 21, and a first-rounder next year. I know the buzz at the Senior Bowl is Stafford is going to San Francisco. I don't think the Niners are going to look to be trading pick 12, and I think that's going to be a deal-breaker. I think the Lions are going to need to get a first-round pick this year, along with other stuff, obviously. So I think the Niners might be willing to cough it up and more, but I think the Colts are really going to go hard into Matthew Stafford since they're probably not going to get Deshawn Watson since they're in the same division as the Texans, and I think they will get a deal done. The Atlanta Falcons, I have them trading Julio Jones to the Jets for their 2nd-rounder. That's pick 34. I know Julio Jones hasn't requested a trade like the other 2 players, but he's not getting any younger. And I think the Falcons could be in a position to start to clean house a little bit on the roster. And for the Jets, get a elite playmaker for your new franchise quarterback, whoever that may be. I guess we'll find out in a minute. And I think this is a fair trade for both sides. The last deal, the Texans are going to be trading J.J. Watt along with a future 4th to the Las Vegas Raiders in exchange for the Raiders' 2nd-round pick this year. That's pick 48. And a 2nd-rounder next year. So the Texans are getting 2 2nd-rounders for a defensive lineman who's not getting any younger. For the Raiders, they have to improve that front 7. They're getting themselves a very good player and a very big name in J.J. Watt without having to trade a first-round pick. I think Mayock and Gruden know that they have to start winning soon, and if not, their jobs could be on the line. I think the Raiders are going to be patient with those 2, but time is starting to wind down a little bit. I think they're going to be aggressive to make a big move, and J.J. Watt is the perfect player for them. Before we talk about the picks, I have color-coded which picks are being traded. So the picks listed in green are traded picks, and the picks listed in white are the picks not getting traded, and I have all the trades listed on the bottom, at least for this interval of 8 picks. So let's get this one started. The top 2 picks I have remaining the same. The Jaguars pick Trevor Lawrence, quarterback Clemson. That's a no-brainer. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that other than it's the obvious selection. Pick 2, I still have Zach Wilson, quarterback BYU, going to the Jets. The more I think about it, the more I am confident that the Jets will pick Wilson over Justin Fields or some other option like trading back or a non-quarterback like Penei Sewell or Devontae Smith. I think Zach Wilson is kind of separating himself a little bit as the 2nd quarterback in this class. I think he can go either way with him or Fields. If you have Justin Fields ranked ahead of Wilson, I don't think that's wrong. I think they're very close. I think Wilson's a little bit better by a tad, and I think just based on the season Wilson had this year, I do think he will be the pick here. So, the Texans obviously just acquired pick 3 from the Dolphins in the Deshawn Watson trade. We already went over that. The Texans also acquired quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, so you'd think that Houston would not pick a quarterback here. That would mean Atlanta at 4 has to be licking their chops because they know Justin Fields is going to fall to them. Well, not so fast. The Carolina Panthers have jumped their divisional rivals to get Justin Fields. So the Texans are going to trade back here. They will be acquiring the 8th pick from Carolina, along with the 40th pick, that's the Panthers' second rounder, and a first rounder next year. So the Panthers are trading a 1 next year and a 2 this year just to move up 5 picks, but they believe it's worth it. The Panthers do not have their franchise quarterback on the roster at the moment. Teddy Bridgewater is a fine bridge quarterback, and I think he would start early on, at least for now, over Justin Fields, who is still a little bit raw. But Fields has an incredible ceiling, and I think the Carolina Panthers, if presented with this opportunity, would do it in a heartbeat. I don't think they want Fields going to their divisional rival, and they get him for their team, a guy who can be your next Cam Newton. I'm not comparing Fields exactly to Cam Newton, but another mobile quarterback who has all of the arm talent. And I think this will be a great move for the Panthers. And for the Texans, they obviously don't have a lot of future pieces on their roster, so why not go ahead and get more draft picks? I think that trade is a win-win. So the Falcons at 4, they would pick Justin Fields here, but now that he's off the board, they're in a little bit of a predicament. This could be a trade-down scenario, although I don't think there are any obvious teams to move up. Maybe someone who really wants an offensive lineman try to move up ahead of the Bengals for Penei Sewell. However, I had the Falcons standing pat and selecting Devontae Smith, wide receiver out of Alabama. They could look at Penei Sewell here. They also could look at Trey Lance as well. But remember, I do have them trading Julio Jones to the Jets for their second rounder. So Atlanta kind of needs another receiver now. They have Calvin Ridley, who's great. So why not add Ridley's former college teammate in Devontae Smith? I know they were only teammates 1 year, but it is a fact they were teammates. Devontae Smith, the Heisman Trophy winner, had an outstanding season this year for Alabama. We all know this. And I think the Falcons are going to need a playmaker if Julio Jones is not on the roster. So why not go with Devontae Smith here? Pick 5, I have the Bengals picking Penei Sewell. All of this drama in the top 4, and I think the Bengals have to be ecstatic now because they get their guy. If the Dolphins don't trade the 3rd pick, I think Penei Sewell will be headed to South Beach. But now that the Dolphins don't get the 3rd pick, now that the Panthers are moving up for Justin Fields, the Bengals have to be ecstatic because they end up with Penei Sewell. This is a no-brainer pick. If Sewell is on the board, I think he has to be the selection. The Bengals need to go offensive line. They need to protect Joe Burrow. Enough said. Pick 6. This is a little bit of a surprise, and I don't think Eagles fans are going to like this, so hear me out. Ja'Marr Chase is still on the board. Jaylen Waddle is still on the board. Patrick Surtain is still on the board. Micah Parsons is still here. A number of great options for Philly to go. But I have them selecting Kyle Pitts. Tight end out of Florida. I think Pitts will go higher than people expect because Kyle Pitts is not just a tight end. He is a playmaker. You can put him all over the offense. I think that's exactly what the Eagles would do here. And this just rubs me as a Howie Roseman type pick. Roseman does not like to go with the obvious route. Usually that bites him in the butt. I mean, Roseman is not known as a very good drafter. I'm not saying this is a bad pick. I actually kind of like this pick for the Eagles, even over Ja'Marr Chase, who would also be a very good selection here. But the Eagles don't normally go with the obvious picks. They like to think outside the box. Usually it does not work out. This time I think it could work out as they go with Pitts. Lions at 7. I don't think the Lions have to pick a quarterback here because the Lions roster is not winning anytime soon. So I don't think they have to rush and immediately pick Trey Lance here. If they like Trey Lance, then yeah, he would be the selection. But I'm not sold that the Lions would pick Trey Lance. And I think the Lions are in an interesting opportunity that they can wait until they really find the guy they like, whether that's someone next year like Spencer Rattler or Sam Howell, or maybe waiting down the line. The Lions have time. They're just starting their rebuild. They don't have to get a quarterback now. And I am selecting Micah Parsons, linebacker out of Penn State. I am a Lions fan myself. The Lions' linebacking core is absolute garbage. Jelani Tavai should not be on an NFL roster. Jared Davis will probably be gone. Jamie Collins, we don't know how he will do in a non-Patriot scheme. Reggie Ragland, I think, is a free agent. I mean, the linebacking core is not pretty. Christian Jones isn't all that special. Michael Parsons is someone who can do it all. Not particularly great at one thing, and I think the ceiling here with picking a guy like Parsons this high is not particularly high. But the Lions are getting a very high floor player who will be immediately able to contribute. Fits a gigantic need at linebacker, and I think this makes a lot of sense for them. Texans at 8, they go with Patrick Surtain, the second cornerback out of Alabama. So the Texans have made a lot of movement. They obviously acquired pick 3 in the Deshawn Watson trade. They moved back with Carolina. I have them keeping this pick and selecting Surtain. I think the Texans just have to go with the best player on the board. They do not have a lot of players on their roster who they're really going to build around. And Patrick Surtain is an exceptional prospect. Get him in there. Try to make him your long-term cornerback going forward. And, I mean, the Texans do have a couple pieces on defense, and I think Surtain instantly would make a huge difference for the present and certainly for the future as well. As you can see, we have some more trades here to talk about, starting right away with the 9th pick. I don't think the Denver Broncos have an obvious choice. Micah Parsons and Patrick Surtain would both make sense, but they are off the board. I'm not sure they're totally sold on Caleb Farley. So I have them trading back with the Washington football team. I have the football team giving up pick 19, pick 51, which is their second rounder, and a third next year. So the football team is giving up a 2 and a future 3 to move up 10 spots. And I have them selecting Jamar Chase, wide receiver out of LSU. The football team needs more playmakers. They have Terry McLaurin, who's great. They have Antonio Gibson, who's great. But they don't really have another receiver with McLaurin. Jamar Chase should probably not be on the board here at 9, but with the Bengals being able to get Penei Sewell, with the Eagles and Lions passing on him, the Washington football team knows they could not waste this opportunity, and they go up and get their man. The Broncos are getting a very good haul here. Obviously, as I said, there's no obvious pick for them, so why not trade down, get more selections? Again, I think this is a good move for both sides. Pick 10. I know Dallas fans have not liked my first 2 mock drafts. I had them getting offensive tackle Christian Darrisaw both times. I know the Cowboys need defense. You don't have to explain this to me in the comments. I know that. So, the good news for Dallas fans is they're not picking Darrisaw here at 10. But they're not going defense either. I have them selecting Rashawn Slater, the offensive lineman out of Northwestern. Very versatile, very athletic player. He can play tackle. He can play guard. And I think he does need some fine-tuning, which is fine because the Cowboys have Tyron Smith and Lyle Collins. But Tyron Smith has injury issues. He's not getting any younger, which is why I think Dallas has to think about offensive line here. The Cowboys know what having an elite offensive line can do for an offense, so I think they're really going to focus on getting some more young pieces for the O-line this offseason. Pick 11, the Giants select Jaylen Waddle, wide receiver out of Alabama. I think this is a great pick for the Giants. They need another playmaker on their offense, a true weapon with the ball in his hands. They have Saquon Barkley, who's great, but they need an elite receiver, and I think Jaylen Waddle has the chance to be just that. This is good value for the Giants, a position of need. Not much to talk about other than that this is a great pick. So at 12, I actually have another trade here. I have the New England Patriots moving up 3 spots. They see Trey Lance is on the board, and they don't want to risk another team moving up. So I have the Niners moving down from 12 to 15 and getting a future third rounder. This is a nice move for the Niners. The player I would have had San Francisco pick at 12 ends up being their pick at 15. We'll talk about him in a little bit. But meanwhile, for New England, they get their potential franchise quarterback in Trey Lance. I think they're going to have to sign a bridge quarterback in the offseason. Get a guy like Ryan Fitzpatrick or Jameis Winston. Worst case scenario, I know Patriots fans aren't going to like this. If you have to, maybe consider bringing Cam Newton back. Okay, probably not. But I do think there are good options for bridge quarterbacks. Andy Dalton is another example. Tyrod Taylor as well. I know those names are not great, but you need a starting quarterback next year, and I don't think it'll be Trey Lance. Let's say hypothetically they sign Andy Dalton. They make this move to get Trey Lance. So your quarterback room next year is Dalton, Lance, and Jarrett Stidham. If Dalton struggles, you can put in Stidham. If you really like what you see from Trey Lance in training camp in the preseason, you can put him in as well, although I don't think Trey Lance really should play a whole lot next year. I don't think whoever gets him should rush him. Pick 13, great selection here for the Chargers. I have them selecting Christian Darrisaw, offensive tackle out of Virginia Tech. I don't think people realize how good Christian Darrisaw is, and the Chargers are getting a home run selection here. They know they have to protect their quarterback in Justin Herbert, so getting a guy like Darrisaw here, phenomenal selection for LA. Pick 14. I've had this same pick for the Minnesota Vikings every time, and that's not changing. I have them getting Kwity Paye, the edge rusher out of Michigan. The Vikings need another pass rusher alongside Danielle Hunter, who is a stud, but they don't really have that. I think they could go a number of different positions here. They could look at O-line. They could look at linebacker, although I do think that's kind of unlikely. They could look at corner. We know Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman love drafting their corners, but edge rusher is in need as well. Kwity Paye, first one off the board. Niners at 15. Although they miss out on Deshawn Watson and Matthew Stafford, this is a pretty good consolation prize. They still get Caleb Farley, who would have been the pick at 12, and they add a future third from the Patriots. Jimmy Garoppolo is a fine quarterback. I don't think it's worst case scenario that Garoppolo starts there next year. They could still go ahead and make a move. What if Aaron Rodgers is traded? I don't think that's very likely. But, I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo is not a bad starting quarterback. He just took them to the Super Bowl last year. I know Garoppolo's not great. They could certainly make an upgrade. Deshaun Watson is far better than Jimmy G. Matthew Stafford as well is noticeably better than Jimmy G. But he's still a starting caliber quarterback. So if you can't make a move for one of those guys, then don't panic. Just run the course, get Farley, see how Jimmy G plays this year. And if he doesn't play well, then you need a quarterback and you'll go get one next offseason. Pick 16. This is the same selection that I had in my last mock. The Cardinals selecting Gregory Rousseau, the edge rusher out of Miami. They could use some more young pass rushers. Hassan Reddick kind of had that one fluky game against the Giants. Chandler Jones is really good, but he's not getting any younger. Rousseau is the upside of a top 5 selection. He has some work technically to work on, but if he can settle out those mechanics, continue to improve his run defense, and continue to get after the quarterback, then this will be a nice pick for the Cardinals. The Las Vegas Raiders are on the board here at 17. Remember, they did just acquire J.J. Watt from the Texans, but they did not give up this pick in order to do so. I have them selecting linebacker Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah out of Notre Dame. A very unique prospect, very athletically gifted, super versatile, great in coverage. I think he's a really interesting player, and the Raiders need help on their front seven. I've made that clear about 3 times today at least. They're getting J.J. Watt to help out the pass rush. Now they got to go ahead and get themselves another linebacker, and I think Owusu-Koramoah is one of those interesting players in this year's class. Pick 18. The Texans acquired this in the Deshaun Watson trade. I have them going with Elijah Vera-Tucker, offensive lineman out of USC. The Texans do not have a great offensive line, and Vera-Tucker is very versatile. He can play tackle, he can play guard as well, and he can fill a number of different spots for the Texans. The Texans have multiple holes on their offensive line, so see where he fits best, plug him in, and boom, you got yourself a starting offensive lineman for potentially the next decade. Pick 19, the Denver Broncos. Remember, they moved down from pick 9, so Washington could go ahead and trade up for Jamar Chase. And I have Denver selecting Zaven Collins, linebacker out of Tulsa. I really like this pick for the Broncos. I think Tulsa is a super intriguing player. 6'4", 260. This man is a large human, but, I mean, he plays like he's 220. Someone who weighs 260 should not have his coverage skills, should not have his lateral quickness, but Zaven Collins is a very unique player. The Broncos are a number of teams who could use some help on their linebacking core, and I think this is a great pick. At 20, the Chicago Bears select Sam Cosby, offensive tackle out of Texas. The Bears do not have their starting quarterback next year at the moment. Now, they could re-sign Mitchell Trubisky, and I think that is fairly likely. But regardless, they have to improve the offense around whoever said quarterback will be. Allen Robinson is as good as gone, so this could be a wide receiver. But their offensive line sucks too. So Sam Cosmi, very solid pick here. Very talented offensive lineman out of Texas. And I think this would be a smart selection. Remember, the Lions did acquire pick 21 from the Colts in the Matthew Stafford trade. And I have them going with Christian Barmore, interior defensive lineman out of Alabama. As bad as the Lions' linebacking core was, the interior defensive line was not much better. Danny Shelton, Nick Williams, they're not great. We did find a little bit of a diamond in the rough in the late rounds last year with John Pennicini, but, I mean, even so, he's no Christian Barmore, who was very impressive down the stretch this season for Alabama, performed well in both playoff games. He's a guy who can disrupt the run, he can go after the quarterback, and we've seen what top interior defensive linemen can do. We see the havoc they can wreak. I think this is a great pick here for Detroit. Micah Parsons, Christian Barmore in the first round, really setting up a new physical tone for the defense, and I like it. Pick 22, Jalen Phillips, edge rusher out of Miami to the Tennessee Titans. They have to improve their pass rush. Jalen Phillips, certainly quite the story. He was the top recruit in his class, went to UCLA. Things didn't really work out. Looked like he was kind of done with football, but then he transferred to Miami and totally rejuvenated his career, had an incredible year this season, has fully earned his way into first-round conversation. The Titans' defense was not the reason why they made the playoffs last year. It was their offense, and the defense was just not good for the most part last year. They really had trouble stopping opposing teams, and there were way too many close, high-scoring games last year for the Titans, so they have to get more guys going after the quarterback, and I think this is a nice selection. Pick 23, the Jets select Joseph Osai, edge rusher out of Texas. I think Osai is a really high-floor player, and the Jets need some more help with guys going after the quarterback. I think the Jets have hit a grand slam in this year's draft. Picking Zach Wilson at 2, trading for Julio Jones without giving up a first-round pick, and now getting a really well-rounded pass rusher in Joseph Osai. I think the Jets are doing a really good job here, and I think they'll be able to compete very early on with the new Robert Saleh tenure. Pick 24, the Steelers have a number of options they could go. Offensive line is certainly a route they could look at. Plenty of good offensive tackles on the board. Najee Harris, he makes a lot of sense here too. James Conner is a free agent. They could also look at Travis Etienne for what it's worth, although I do think if they were presented their choice at running back, they would go with Najee Harris. But I have them selecting Mac Jones, and I don't really think Steeler fans are going to like it, but hear me out. So the Steelers are in a position to compete for a playoff spot. I imagine they will try to compete in the offseason. They're going to lose some pieces. James Conner, Juju Smith-Schuster, probably not going to be on the roster next year. So a guy like Najee Harris would certainly help you win now, but the Steelers do not have their long-term quarterback on the roster. It's not Mason Rudolph. It's not Joshua Dobbs. I think they cut Duck Hodges, not that it would have been him. Now, Ben Roethlisberger, I imagine, will be the starter there next year. I understand he left a sour taste in people's mouth, but Roethlisberger, the first 10 or 11 games this year, he was good. Then down the stretch, he was absolutely abysmal, but I still think the Steelers are going to be confident with Ben Roethlisberger going into next year, but after next year, he's probably going to retire. They have to look at franchise quarterback. Mac Jones is still on the board, and he's going to be their pick. I don't think Jones is a high-ceiling player, but incredible accuracy, good anticipation. He doesn't have ridiculous arm talent. He's not ridiculously mobile, and I don't think he'll ever be a great quarterback. But put him in an organization like Pittsburgh, one of the best front offices in football. The Steelers are always talented on both sides of the ball. The Steelers' offense has a lot of good players, talent in the backfield, talent in the receiving core. The offensive line could use some work, but there are some promising pieces there. And I think this is a pretty solid fit here for Mac Jones. He doesn't have to play next year, and he has a mentor in Ben Roethlisberger. I think this is a better pick than Steelers fans will think, although I'm not a huge Mac Jones guy myself. I don't think this is a terrible pick for them at all. The Jacksonville Jaguars are back on the clock. They need some help in a number of areas, considering their roster is not good. But I have them selecting Asante Samuel Jr., cornerback out of Florida State. They drafted C.J. Henderson in the top 10 last year. Henderson had a rocky year, as what you would expect from a rookie corner. But Henderson showed a lot of promise, and I think the Jaguars have themselves a really good player going forward. But they don't have a lot else at the cornerback position. Asante Samuel Jr. had a great year this year at Florida State, and I think the Jaguars will be focused on offense primarily in the offseason, but I do think they do want to look at corner here, get themselves another guy alongside C.J. Henderson. And as you can see, not too long, I will have the Jaguars moving up for an offensive player. We'll talk about that in a second. Browns at 26. They're going to select Azeez Ojulari, edge rusher out of Georgia. I'm a big Ojulari fan. He's a little bit undersized, and he's a little bit raw, but I mean, he made plays this year. He was very productive in every game, was great in the bowl game against Cincinnati. I believe he racked up 3 sacks, was very impressive, has a lot of quickness and bend off the edge, and Although I think the Browns would love a guy like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah or Zayden Collins here, I don't think that's totally likely. They could look at another linebacker. Nick Bolton out of Missouri is an option. I think Baron Browning out of Ohio State is going to go higher than people expect. Chaz Surratt, probably too early for him. Same with Dylan Moses. So I don't think linebacker is realistic here in this range. And they could use some more help on the edge. Myles Garrett's great. Olivier Vernon, he's fine, but he's not getting any younger. So always good to add more pass rush, and I'm a big Ojulari fan. Ravens at 27. Ojulari probably would have been the pick here. I think I had Ojulari going to the Ravens last time. But I have him selecting Kadarius Toney, wide receiver out of Florida. He would have been the pick to both the Saints at 28 and the Packers at 29. So both of those teams have to be very upset. Kadarius Toney is a weapon. What do the Baltimore Ravens need? More weapons for Lamar Jackson. There are some certainly speedy threats in Marquise Brown, Devin Duvernay, Miles Boykin at the receiver position, but none of those guys are great. While Kadarius Toney is not a true outside receiver, he is a chess piece for John Harbaugh, Greg Roman, and the Ravens offense, and I think they could have a lot of fun with him. Saints at 28. Instead of Kadarius Toney, they will settle for J.C. Horn. Although J.C. Horn's a really good pick in his own right, I don't really want to say settle. I think this is a good consolation prize. Horn had a very good season this year at South Carolina. Great cover corner. He does need to improve on his tackling, but other than that, solid selection. The Green Bay Packers have to be sick to their stomach right now because their target, Kadarius Toney, just went. Their backup plan also just went in J.C. Horn, so now they're stuck in a little bit of a predicament. Now, there are still plenty of options they could go here. They could look to trade down. There are also plenty of good players still on the board who fit needs, and I'm going to have them selecting cornerback Eric Stokes out of Georgia. Stokes hasn't generated a ton of first-round buzz, but I do think he's one of the more underrated players in this year's class, and I think this will be a pretty solid selection for the Green Bay Packers, even if they don't get their top guys. So here at 30, I don't think there's a super obvious pick here for the Bills. There are a few different routes they could consider, but the Jacksonville Jaguars are in need of offensive line to protect Trevor Lawrence, and there are some teams coming up in the Bucs and the Chiefs, specifically Kansas City, who could be looking at offensive line. Buffalo as well could consider an offensive lineman, so I had the Jaguars moving up 3 spots from pick 33 to 30. Not a huge jump, so I only had them giving up a future 4th, but they really want to get their guy. And for Buffalo, if you don't have an obvious pick here, why not fall to the beginning of the 2nd round and get that future 4th round selection? And I had the Jaguars selecting Alex Leatherwood, offensive tackle out of Alabama. I think he could be an instant plug-and-play starter. The Jaguars have to improve the offensive line for Trevor Lawrence. They cannot send him out into the cavalry, so I think this would make sense. Bucs at 31. I've had them going Travis Etienne all along. I think this pick makes too much sense. The Bucs are trying to win now. They don't have a clear star at running back. Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette are fine, but neither of them have the pass-catching ability that Travis Etienne does. And to be specific, neither of them are all that good of receivers in general. So I think having a receiving back in the backfield, as Tom Brady gets older, his arm is going to get worse. He's going to depend more on the short passes. And why not get someone who can make plays in the short passing game, who's extremely crafty with the ball in his hands, in Travis Etienne? So I think this pick makes too much sense for the Bucs, and I think they're going to rock with it. Kansas City at 32. They don't have a ton of holes, but remember, they are entering cap space hell. And I do think they have to look at some of the more important positions, like offensive tackle, to prepare for the future. So I have them selecting Jalen Mayfield out of Michigan. Eric Fisher did just tear his Achilles, and that could mean he might not be the same. He's also not getting any younger. Mitchell Schwartz as well, not getting any younger. So I think you have to get younger at tackle. Jalen Mayfield's a little bit raw, but this is a good situation for him. He doesn't have to step in right away, and then maybe in a season or two, plug him into tackle, and he could be really solid. So I think this pick makes a lot of sense here for the Chiefs. Probably not going to make a huge impact this year, but going forward, I would like this selection a lot for Kansas City. Now on to round 2. I will spend a little bit less time on each pick, but I will still be talking about all of them in depth. Starting with the Buffalo Bills here at 33. They just moved down 3 spots, adding on a future 4th rounder next year, selecting Nick Bolton, linebacker out of Missouri. Probably would have been the selection for the Bills at 30, so this all works out for them. They get a future 4th for their troubles, although there aren't really any troubles here. The Bills need some help at linebacker. They have a fine linebacking core, but Matt Milano's a free agent. I think he's going to get a pretty big-ish contract, and I don't know if the Bills have the resources to pay him. Josh Allen's coming up on an extension soon. There are other young players who they're going to have to pay, so Matt Milano could be a casualty and let go of in the offseason. So pairing Bolton with Tremaine Edmunds, I think they can be a really good duo. Tremaine Edmunds is another player who needs an extension soon. I imagine the Bills will pay him because Edmunds is outstanding. But having another guy with Edmunds, I think, will be important, and I think Bolton would be a fine selection here. So remember, the Falcons did trade Julio Jones for the 34th pick. We talked about this a little bit earlier. So now they have back-to-back picks. They have 34 and 35. So at 34, I have them selecting Najee Harris, running back out of Alabama. He would have been the pick to the Dolphins at 36 most likely. So the Dolphins, 2 mock drafts in a row, lose on Najee Harris right at the end. And this time, the Dolphins don't have multiple second-round picks to where they can use a running back. This pick 36 for the Dolphins is their only pick in the first 2 rounds this year, thanks to acquiring Deshawn Watson, although I think the Dolphins would rather Watson than all of these picks. But nonetheless, let's talk about Najee Harris to the Falcons. Todd Gurley's a free agent. He was not that special either. And although I think the Falcons are trying to clean house, get younger, I still think they want to be competitive this year. And I think Najee Harris here in the second round will instantly be their best running back on the roster. He's going to be the bell cow back on day 1, and he's going to be a really good bell cow back. Falcons back on the board here at 35 with their own second rounder, and I have them selecting Baron Browning, linebacker out of Ohio State. He's performed well at the Senior Bowl, very athletic, provides a number of different things for a defense. And as I said, I think Baron Browning's going to go a lot higher than people expect him. Literally in this potential range of high in the second round. I think most people view him as a potential 3rd or 4th round pick at the moment. The Falcons need some more help on the linebacking core. Deion Jones is cool, but outside of him, there's not a whole lot. And the Falcons have used both of their first 2 picks on offense, and they don't need offense a ton, although reuniting Devontae Smith and Najee Harris will be fun. They have to pretty much put the rest of their focus in this year's draft on defense. Pick 36, Miami Dolphins miss out on Najee Harris, but this is a darn good consolation prize. Terrace Marshall Jr., wide receiver out of LSU. I'm a big Terrace Marshall guy. I think he should absolutely go in the first round. When it's all said and done, he will probably be my wide receiver 4 in this class, behind the big 3 of Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase, and Jaylen Waddle. So, very good value here for the Fins. They need to get some more pieces for Deshaun Watson. Their offense is not particularly great at the moment. They need help at running back. They need help at receiver. They need help on the offensive line. So they could look at all of those spots here, but value-wise, not really a running back who you could look at here. Maybe Javonte Williams. Offensive line, there are always offensive linemen you could consider, but a lot of the late first-round receivers like Terrace Marshall and Rashad Bateman have kind of fallen a little bit. So if the Dolphins will take advantage, get Terrace Marshall, I think this is a great pick with pairing him alongside Deshaun Watson. Bengals at 37. They need help on the offensive line. That isn't news. They got Penei Sewell at 5, but they're not done yet. Trey Smith, the guard out of Tennessee, versatile, very talented offensive lineman. He's a really good player, probably a first-round talent. There are some medical question marks with him, but when healthy, he is a stud. Eagles at 38 go Ifeatu Melifonwu, cornerback out of Syracuse. That's a fun name to say. The Eagles' cornerback room is not good. They drafted a playmaker in the first round in Kyle Pitts. They could look at Rashad Bateman here, who has fallen to the early part of the second round, but they already drafted a receiver. Kyle Pitts is a wide receiver / tight end to me, and I don't think they want to use another pick this high on a receiver when they have big needs on defense too. So Melifonwu here, solid pick. I think he would have to make a fairly early impact, maybe not right away, but pretty soon. Broncos at 39. Remember, Denver now has 2 second-round picks after moving down with Washington in the first round. With their first second, I have them selecting Davion Nixon, interior defensive lineman out of Iowa. I think I had Nixon going here all 3 times. I could be mistaken by that, but I'm pretty sure I've had him going to the Broncos at 39 in all 3 mock drafts thus far, which is kind of funny. But Davion Nixon had an outstanding season this year for the Hawkeyes, was excellent, one of the bigger draft risers, and Broncos need more help on their defense. Nathan Collins is a phenomenal pick at 19, but they need more. They need some help in the middle, and I think Nixon will be a nice selection. Texans at 40. They got this pick for moving down from pick 3 to pick 8 with the Carolina Panthers. The Texans went from 0 first and second round picks this year to like 5, I think, thanks to the Deshawn Watson trade and then the separate trade with Carolina. So I have them selecting Dayo Odenigbo, the edge rusher out of Vanderbilt. I hope I said his name right. I don't think I've ever said his name before, so I guess that's a first. But Odenigbo is a really talented player. Certainly a sleeper in my opinion. I don't think a lot of people are talking about him, but I do think he is really good. The Texans need some pass rush. J.J. Watt, gone. He was traded to the Raiders, as I mentioned earlier. So adding some more pieces here to improve the front seven, getting some more guys in the trenches. I like this pick. Huge steal for the Lions here at 41. I have them selecting Rashad Bateman, wide receiver out of Minnesota. Bateman should not be on the board right now, but he is, and the Lions aren't going to complain. Detroit has a pretty big hole at wide receiver. Kenny Golladay is a free agent. Now, Golladay was on Good Morning Football yesterday, and I don't want to make this a huge deal, but he did sound excited about head coach Dan Campbell. That doesn't mean Golladay will be back. We could tag and trade him, or he could go elsewhere, but it is worth noting. Marvin Jones, also a free agent. I don't see him returning. But regardless, I mean, whether Golladay is back or not, we need more receivers, and this is phenomenal value. Rashad Bateman should not be on the board, and you might be saying this is biased. Rashad Bateman won't fall to 41, and you're probably right. He won't fall to 41 most likely, but in this mock, I have some of the receivers falling lower than they should, and the Lions are gladly going to capitalize. So Detroit today selects Micah Parsons, Christian Barmore, and Rashad Bateman, and they have 2 first-rounders next year. So although things seem bleak right now in Detroit, I think Lions fans have a lot to be excited about. Pick 42, Dylan Moses, linebacker out of Alabama, to the Giants. The Giants' defense was surprisingly pretty good last year, but they could use some more help on the linebacking core. Dylan Moses, entering a couple years ago, he looked like a potential top 15 pick. Had the injury, wasn't the same player this year, but still going the first 2 rounds. Tevin Jenkins, offensive tackle out of Oklahoma State, to the Niners. He's a raw player, but there is potential with him. Trent Williams probably going to leave San Francisco. I do think they might want to have a veteran there in place of Jenkins for now, but a lot of potential here with Jenkins. Not a whole lot of people are giving him a ton of buzz, but I do think he could be a good player. Cowboys at 44. They do go defense here. Levi Onwuzurike, interior defensive lineman out of Washington. In the past 2 mock drafts, I listed him as Northwestern, and nobody corrected me. Or at least nobody yet. Now that I have learned more about Onwuzurike, for one thing, I know that he played for Washington and not Northwestern, so we have cleaned up that mistake. And I think he could be a really solid pick here for the Cowboys. I understand corner is a huge position of need, but the corner board right now isn't the greatest. They could reach a little bit if they wanted to, but I have them going with a good value selection here in Onwuzurike, who I think can make an early impact. Jaguars at 45, select Pat Freiermuth, tight end out of Penn State. I think this is the same pick I gave them last time. You want to add some safety blankets on the offense for Trevor Lawrence. That's exactly what the tight end position does, and that's exactly what Pat Freiermuth will bring to the table. New England at 46, Brevin Jordan, tight end out of Miami. A little bit more athletic, maybe a little bit more upside than Freiermuth. We know Bill Belichick and that Patriot system loves tight ends. They drafted 2 tight ends in the 3rd round last year in Devin Asiasi and Dalton Keene. Doesn't look like either of those were great picks. I am convinced Bill Belichick does not know how to draft at all. I think he might just be picking names out of the hat at this point. Although, as good of a head coach as Bill Belichick is, he cannot draft worth a damn. Although, Brevin Jordan is a pretty good pick here, so I guess that would help make up for things. Chargers at 47, Aaron Robinson, cornerback out of UCF. This is a name who's kind of entered the fold the past couple days as a potential 2nd-round pick. I'm pretty sure Daniel Jeremiah mocked him in the 1st round. I'm not ready to get that ahead of myself, although I do think Robinson is an intriguing prospect. I don't know a ton about him. I will be doing more research on him, but Chargers could use some more corners. They could look to get younger there. Here at pick 48, this selection originally belonged to the Raiders, but remember, they did trade it for J.J. Watt along with their 2nd-rounder next year in exchange for Watt and a future 4. So with this pick, the Houston Texans are going to go wide receiver Dwayne Eskridge out of Western Michigan. This name has been buzzing in the draft community for the past week. He has been incredible in the Senior Bowl, and even before the Senior Bowl, he was really starting to get some buzz, really starting to put people on the map about this kid. I think he's a very talented player. The Texans might not want to go receiver here because they just might want to focus on the trenches or defense, but Will Fuller is probably not coming back, and they could use some more help at the wide receiver position, and Dwayne Eskridge is a very interesting, very talented prospect who I think is going to continue to rise up people's boards up until April. Here at 49, this is the same pick I gave the Cardinals in my previous mock last weekend. Running back Javonte Williams out of North Carolina. I think Javonte Williams has solidified himself as the third running back in this year's class. He had a great season this year with the Tar Heels. Extremely explosive player. He can make plays out of the backfield as a receiver. Kenyon Drake is a free agent. Chase Edmonds is okay. Nothing special, but he's a fine player. Arizona does have a few bigger needs, but I do think they really want to compete for a playoff spot next year. And I think Javonte Williams would make a gigantic impact right out of the jump for Arizona. Pick 50, the Texans are back on the clock. They got this pick in the Deshawn Watson trade from Miami, and I have them selecting Marlon Tuipulotu, interior defensive lineman out of USC. I have Tuipulotu being the first USC interior defensive lineman off the board, even before Jay Tufele, which is interesting, but I think Tuipulotu has certainly gained some traction these past couple of weeks. Has had a pretty nice Senior Bowl thus far, and look at the Houston Texans. They entered the draft with 0 top 50 picks, and now they have 5. Patrick Surtain and Elijah Vera Tucker in the first round, and then here in round 2, Dayo Odenigbo, Dwayne Eskridge, and now Marlon Tuipulotu. Very solid draft for the Texans, and they're getting Tua along with 3 first-round picks next year. Keep that in mind. They have their franchise quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa, and next year they have their own first-round pick. They had the Dolphins' first-round pick in the Watson trade, and they have Carolina's first-round pick when the Panthers moved up to get Justin Fields. So, even though trading Deshaun Watson seems like an absolute disaster, the Houston Texans have some pieces going forward. Now, knowing them, Jack Easterby's totally going to mess this all up, but if they don't mess it up, then this might not end up as bad as we think. Broncos at 51 select Dylan Ray Dunce, offensive tackle out of North Dakota State. He's been very impressive in the Senior Bowl. Probably going to go higher than this, but I do have the offensive tackles falling a little bit. I think I had Ray Dunce all the way at the Colts with in my last mock here at 54. So Ray Dunce has kind of gotten unlucky. I think he should go before this, but I don't think the Broncos are complaining. Denver's had an outstanding draft, by the way. Zaven Collins, Davion Nixon, and Dylan Ray Dunce in the first 2 rounds, plus a third next year from Washington. That's a really good draft for the Denver Broncos. Pick 52, Rondale Moore, wide receiver, Purdue, to the Chicago Bears. Their offense needs playmakers. There's no secret. Rondale Moore is not the prototypical outside receiver that a guy like Allen Robinson is, but Rondale Moore can be a spark plug for the Chicago Bears offense. Get a guy who can make plays, dynamic with the ball in his hands, and I think this is something they should consider. Titans at 53. I believe I've had this pick in all 3 mock drafts so far. Wide receiver Nico Collins out of Michigan. Big-bodied receiver, another guy who's looked good this week at the Senior Bowl. Corey Davis is a free agent. He's going to get big money somewhere. Corey Davis had a really good year this season, and I think he's going to get paid, but I don't think it'll be by the Tennessee Titans. So now they're getting Davis's replacement. And a very similar player to Davis. Big body, big catch radius. I think Nico Collins and A.J. Brown could be a really nice pairing. The only thing is, there's a good shot with how Nico Collins has done this week at the Senior Bowl that he doesn't fall this far. So the Titans are lucky that they can still land him. Colts at 54. What a day to be Indianapolis. Not only do they acquire Matthew Stafford, but Liam Eichenberg somehow falls to them in the 2nd round. There is no way he should be on the board right now. But he is, and the Colts are not going to complain. He could have gone as early as like 20 or 24 to like the Bears or the Steelers. Jacksonville could have looked at him late in the 1st round. But I don't think the Colts are too upset by this revelation. Absolute steal here in the latter part of the 2nd round. Speaking of steals, there's no way Creed Humphrey should be on the board. He's a guy who I think the Steelers will also consider at 24. And now the Steelers get him at 55. Instant replacement for Marquise Pouncey. He can start day 1 if Pouncey's not back next year, and it does look like Pouncey will be retiring. This is a phenomenal selection here for the Steelers. Some of these offensive linemen are going a lot later than they should. Another guy who has 1st-round talent, Wyatt Davis, guard out of Ohio State. I do think Davis falling is not necessarily because of bad luck, unlike Eichenberg and Humphrey, but there are some medical concerns with Davis. If he stays healthy, this is an awesome pick for the Seattle Seahawks. They need offensive line. Russell Wilson's not getting any younger, and although Wilson hasn't really needed a good offensive line, he's 32 years old. He's going to get less mobile, and he's going to need better offensive linemen around him as he starts to get up there in age a little bit. Final 8 picks of the day. We do have a couple trades to talk about, starting with the Rams at 57. They select James Hudson, offensive tackle out of Cincinnati. Now the run on offensive line is really starting to happen, and there's some more offensive linemen who we're going to be talking about shortly. The Rams kind of got unlucky with Ray Duntz and Eichenberg and some of those other really good offensive linemen going fairly recently. But James Hudson's a very talented player. I think he's going to go higher than people expect. Big, athletic offensive tackle. Andrew Whitworth is probably going to retire in the very near future, so they have to look at their future after him, and I think that can be James Hudson. At 58, the Ravens select Jason Oweh, edge rusher out of Penn State. I think I had Oweh going here in my first mock, and I really like this fit because the Ravens know how to find raw edge rushers and develop them. We've seen it with Zadarius Smith and Matthew Judon within the past 5 years. Zadarius Smith left, got a big payday from the Packers, and he's been really good. Matt Judon, probably going to leave in the offseason, probably going to get a big payday somewhere, and probably going to be really darn good. Now, Zadarius Smith and Matt Judon were both day 3 picks. This is still a second rounder, but Jason Oweh is a very, very intriguing player. I don't think he recorded a single sack this year for Penn State, but he has all the physical tools. He has all the upside to be great. You just have to develop him, and there aren't many better landing spots for him than the Ravens. Pick 59. This originally belonged to the Cleveland Browns, but I have a trade. The LA Chargers will be moving up here without giving up a pick this year or a player. I have the Chargers trading their second-round pick next year to the Browns for this pick. I don't know if either fan base is really going to like this because now the Chargers don't have a second-rounder next year, and now the Browns don't have a second-rounder this year. But the Chargers are getting a really good player, and the Browns did not have a super obvious pick that they should have gone with here. So I have the Chargers getting Landon Dickerson. Super talented center out of Alabama. He did tear his ACL in the SEC Championship, but he's a really good player. The character with him is off the charts. Incredible leader from what I have seen and read for Alabama, and I think he's going to bring that into the NFL. You want leaders on your team, and that's exactly what Landon Dickerson can bring for this young Chargers squad with a new head coach, with a lot of young players, a young offensive line, and assuming his knee is totally fine by the time the season starts, he'll be your starting center. Pick 60, the New Orleans Saints select Tutu Atwell, wide receiver out of Louisville. Atwell's a really good player, and the Saints need some more weapons. I don't know who their starting quarterback is going to be next year. It's not going to be Drew Brees. I don't think Jameis Winston will be back, although that is certainly possible. And judging with Sean Payton starting Taysom Hill mid-season over Jameis, I do think the Saints have some trust in Taysom Hill. And if I were to guess now, I think Taysom Hill could be their Week 1 starting quarterback next year. Whether they should do that or not, I think that's a realistic possibility. But regardless who their quarterback is, they need some more weapons, and I think Tutu Atwell is a really solid player. Packers at 61, they also need some more wide receiving help. Elijah Moore was one of the top receivers statistically in the entire nation this year. And Moore's stock feels very unclear. I think he could go in the first round. I think he could go in the 4th round. He is all over the place on mock drafts and people's boards. I don't really like to use mock drafts and other people's boards to make my evaluation, but I do want to see other people's perspectives. And Elijah Moore is all over the place, so I really have no clue where he's going to end up. But the Packers need some more help at wide receiver, and I think this would be a solid pick. Buffalo at 62 will be selecting Javon Holland, defensive back out of Oregon. Big Javon Holland fan. I think he should go a lot earlier than this. The Bills don't need safety at all, at least for the immediate future. Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer is one of the best safety tandems in the NFL. But Javon Holland isn't just a safety. Although he's primarily a safety, he can also play nickel corner, and the Bills need that pretty badly. And Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer aren't getting any younger. Neither of them are super young. So you can develop Javon Holland to eventually be your 3 safety of the future, replacing Micah Hyde. And I think this is a phenomenal pick for the Bills. 63, Quincy Roche, edge rusher out of Miami to the Buccaneers. The Bucks could use some more pass rush. Shaq Barrett's a free agent. He's going to get paid wherever he goes. Jason Pierre-Paul's had a total career rejuvenance, but he's not getting any younger. I think the Bucks need to get more younger on their pass rush. I know more younger isn't correct grammar, but whatever, we're going to roll with it. And I think Quincy Roche would be a pretty solid pick. And then 64, we're finishing things off with a trade. The Atlanta Falcons will be moving up from 68 to 64, also giving the Kansas City Chiefs their 5th rounder, 131 in the process, to select Trayvon Moehrig, safety out of TCU. The reason why I had the Falcons moving up for him is because Trayvon Moehrig should not be on the board right now. And I think there are going to be a lot of teams calling the Kansas City Chiefs to move up. The Jaguars at 65 make a ton of sense for Moehrig. And I think there's a good chance he goes a lot higher than this, but he just happened to fall. And the Chiefs are only moving down 4 spots. For getting an extra 5th round pick, this is a good move for them. And for the Falcons, they feel a little bit desperate to get him. But as I said, Moehrig should not be on the board here at 64. So quite the eventful draft for Atlanta. Devontae Smith, Najee Harris, Baron Browning, and Trayvon Moehrig in the first 2 rounds. But they don't have Julio Jones anymore. So a new future in Atlanta. Probably will be looking at quarterback in the next few years as well. And that will conclude this mock draft. I know it was a little bit crazy, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. I certainly had fun making it. And that will do it for me. I'm out. Peace.